So today I welcome Dr. D.S. Rawal from SSPL DRDO, Dr. Meena Mishra from SSPL DRDO to be the part of this session. So today first talk is on gallium nitride based HAM technology for microwave applications. It is to be delivered by Dr. D.S. Rawal. So now I request Dr. Manish Hooda to kindly introduce the speaker to the audience. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Arun, for giving me opportunity to introduce our first speaker of the day. I welcome you all participants for the fourth day and first session of this workshop. I think you must be enjoying this workshop. Today, it gives me an immense pleasure to introduce our eminent speaker to you. In the brief, I would say that in my belief, he is the real path maker and a real innovator in the field of compound semiconductor in India. With this, Dr. D.R. Rawal is an associate director at Solid State Physics Laboratory, Delhi, working in the area of 35 device technologies. He joined SSPL Delhi in 1992, and his main work for the development of transfer of technologies in gallium arsenide MMIC technology that is presently undergoing for the mass production at GATEC Hyderabad. He's received his MS, Master of Science degrees in 1988 and followed by MTech degree in 1990 from University of Roorkee, now IIT Roorkee. He did his PhD in experimental plasma physics from IIT Delhi. Presently, he is leading a group of fabrication team for the development of GaN-based MMIC technology. He has published more than 85 research papers in international journals like Applied Surface Science and other journals. He has been in reviewer board for various reputed international journals like Applied Surface Science, elsewhere, Journal of Vacuum Science and Technology, IEEE Transition Electron Devices, IEEE Sensor Surface Coat and Technology, Vacuum, Journal of Vacuums, Journal of Alloy and Compounds, elsewhere, Nanotechnology, and Journal of Physics. He has many awards on his credit. Few of his awards are Path-Breaking Awards, Scientist of the Year Award of DRDO, Elsewhere Outstanding Review Award. With this, I hand over to you, sir, to enlighten us on the GaN-based HAM device technology for high-frequency applications. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Manish. Good morning to all the participants. So, as mentioned by Dr. Huda, that I'll be speaking on GaN HAMT device technology, mainly for RF applications. And this talk will be in continuation with what already has been discussed by Professor Dipankar Shah. Most of the important concept he has already introduced on the first session, first day, and so I'll not be going into the basics of the device or basic unit processes. So I'll be more of a discussing more of a technology aspects of device and how those technological aspects are important for RF performance. So the outline of my talk is just for the brief introduction, the significance of the material properties, and then what is the motivation for us to go for this device technology. Then I'll discuss briefly the device design considerations for getting the desired performance and the fabrication sequence normally followed for these device fabrication. Then what is the status of technology at SSPL and what all important academic institutes or other organization in India working in this important area of electronics. Then there are certain techniques that can be used to enhance the device performance. So those techniques we have also developed at our place, and I'll briefly discuss about importance of those uh, techniques and how they have been implemented and enhance the performance. Then another important aspect is the backside processing of these wafers. Since silicon carbide wafer is involved, so backside processing becomes very important. So what all process steps we are carrying out, and then uh, there are degradation issues because very high electric field and very high temperatures are involved in these devices. And then briefly, I'll discuss the recent developments going on worldwide and what is the market forecast for GaN RF application and summarize the talk. So if you consider semiconductor, then silicon is the most important semiconductor of 20th century. But there are still many things which cannot be achieved by silicon. Like light emitting diodes, then IR detectors, ultraviolet detectors, very high speed electronics. Again, this is a high frequency or high speed performance is based on certain electronic transport properties which are not suitable in silicon for high frequency performance. Similarly, high temperature electronics or cryogenic electronics. So these all important aspects of these applications are possible because of compound semiconductors. And the most widely used compound semiconductors are gallium arsenide, indium phosphide, and gallium nitride. But depending on the requirement of power and frequency performance, the particular semiconductor is chosen and worked upon. So these days, because of very high frequency and high power requirement in various applications, gallium nitride is taking over most of the strategic and critical applications. Uh, if you consider the three generations of semiconductor mainly based on silicon, gallium arsenide, and gallium nitride, and you can see that the gallium nitride wins over all three generations because of the obvious better material properties. And you can see that the band gap is 3.4 electron volt. So this gives flexibility of applying very high voltages, high electric field strength is there. Then this is the only wide bandgap semiconductor material system which exists in heterostructure with a two-dimensional electron gas in the quantum well with a very high sheet carrier density, which gives us very high current. Then the other very important parameter for high frequency performance is the saturation velocity, which is very high. And another important parameter is mobility. So on first day, as Professor Dipankar Saha categorically mentioned that high frequency performance is mainly because of the high saturation velocity. Normally, people normally give a lot of value to the high mobility. High mobility is important, but high mobility helps us in reducing the excess resistances and helps in increasing the current density. So high mobility is although very important, but for high frequency, saturation velocity is more important, but the mobility reduces excess resistances, source resistance, drain resistance, and in a way, it also enhances the frequency performance. And then other important material parameter for these high power, high frequency application is the thermal conductivity. So thermal conductivity of gallium nitride is of the order of silicon only, but since there is no native substrate for this, so it is grown on a foreign substrates, and silicon carbide is the most suitable substrate for GaN HAM devices. So this I'll not be discussing in detail, just to tell you that the best frequency performance is still possible using indium phosphide HAMs, and the cutoff frequencies or the maximum frequency reported, Fmax reported, is of the order of terahertz. Whereas if we need high power at high frequency, then the gallium nitride HAM is the best candidate. And just for comparison, the gallium nitride HAMs give power density of the order of 5 to 10 watt per mm up to Ka-band, whereas in gallium arsenide p-HAM or indium phosphide p-HAM, the power density is restricted to 1 watt per mm. So when we are talking of systems of very high power density, one has to go to gallium nitride based systems. And since the density is very high, so we get a lot of advantages in size, weight considerations, which are very important for airborne applications. So another important aspect of this gallium nitride technology is that you can see that the major microwave applications can be divided in two categories. One is below 3 gigahertz and above 3 gigahertz. So you can see that the below 3 gigahertz, many competing technologies are there: silicon carbide, MESFET, silicon, gallium arsenide, HBT, gallium arsenide HAM. But above 3 gigahertz, very limited technologies are meeting the requirement. And above all, the beauty of gallium nitride technology is that it is covering the entire frequency spectrum, and most suitable for high power, high frequency applications. And another important aspect is, if you consider a transmit receive module, which is the heart of any communication system, the three important amplifier or MMIC circuits can be replaced by single MMIC circuit, that is called TR chip. So this power amplifier, low noise amplifier, and switch, if we talk about gallium arsenide technology, they can be separate chips and use lot of space, and also there are losses of integration and all, and it requires limiter also that hampers the low noise performance. So this all 3 or 4 chips can be replaced by just single chip because of the availability of gallium nitride based MMICs. So this gives us a lot of size, weight, and power performance enhancement, and suitable for all airborne radar systems which are for strategic applications. And if you see this R on versus breakdown voltage graph, again for high power switching application, this low R on and high breakdown voltage is the combination required. So if you see, this gallium nitride gives us the lowest R on with the highest breakdown voltage. So this is again most suitable for high power switching applications. So you can see that the demand from the future warfare systems are mainly based on SWaP-C. SWaP-C means size, weight, and power. We want smaller sizes, smaller weight, and high power. And C is again cost. So cost becomes very important when we are competing with commercial applications. And then if you see the GaN material properties or GaN based system devices, they are the most suitable for these kind of applications. And major applications where these devices are being used is the ISA radar, which is a phased array radar, then electronic warfare systems, communication links, satellite communication, then 5G, 6G are coming in big way, and they are the big users of this gallium nitride technology. Then software defined radio, anti-drone radars, all these are mainly using gallium nitride based system because of obvious advantages of size, weight, power. And you can see that this phased array radar, there is no antenna mechanical movement. So we can steer the beam by just changing the phase, and the phase shifters are used, and the beam is scanned, and range and size again, because of the high power density, these radars can be mounted in the fighter aircrafts itself. And all fighter aircraft like Tejas or Rafale are using these phased array radars. And this figure shows that all these 3 MMICs, individual MMICs like power amplifier, low noise amplifier, and switch, are fabricated together in a single chip. So this is called TR chip. So this is the latest state of art technology, and it is further improving the device performance by reducing the integration losses and coupling losses, and size advantage is there. If you see the GaN R&D initiatives in India, considering the importance, many academic institutes are working in this technology, mainly on the device development. So for HAM technology development, ISC Bangalore, IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi, IIT Madras, TIFR, Delhi University, PEC Chandigarh, then HCL, IIT Roorkee is working. But their main area of work is mainly the HAM device. At SSPL, we are working on MMIC technology development. MMIC is microwave monolithic integrated circuits. So basically, the majority of products usable are in the form of integrated circuits. Those are MMIC in the form of low noise amplifier, power amplifier, or switch. And on first day, Professor Dipankar Saha also mentioned about MMICs, and they are working on the gate length of 0.1 micron. And at SSPL, presently, we are working on 3 frequency bands, that is C band, X band, and KU band. And the gate lengths, we are working mainly on 0.7 micron, 0.25 micron, and 0.15 micron. So the majority of products which will be used are based on MMIC technology. And if you look at international standard, in 2019 only this 0.15 micron technology is available for commercial use, but that too limited depending on your end user certificate and all, because you cannot use, or this technology will not be available for strategic system development. So we have to have our own technology for the self-reliance. And looking at the publications, in India is presently ranking 5th in the world, means that a lot of good work is going on and a lot of manpower is already available. So it is very high time to go for these product development, make our country self-reliant. And because of this, now government is also seriously thinking of setting up a GAN fab for development of these MMICs, and a lot of work is going on. So we hope to get our own MMIC technology in near future. Looking at GAN technology at SSPL, basically for any GAN device technology, you have to have a 4 big building blocks. Like you have to have your own process technology, material development, then design and modeling, and measurement. If you look at if you look at any technology advancement, say silicon, the majority of technology advancement has taken place because of the process innovations. But looking at the compound semiconductor technology, the most of the technological advancements have taken place because of the material innovation. So for these RF applications, the material is one of the very important thing. And therefore, the process technology as well as material development becomes very important if you want to have your indigenous technology. And then device, of course, modeling, design, measurement capability also are important. So at SSPL, we have mainly worked for the RF electronics, and that too for the radar applications for phased array radar and electronic warfare systems. And we have our own material growth facility based on MOCVD MB, and then you have to have your own device fabrication sequence with the basic unit processes of contact formation, MESA isolation, then gate formation, passivation, as discussed in detail by Professor Dipankar Saha. And another important aspect is the interconnection technologies, because we are dealing with very high frequencies of the order of 20 gigahertz or 30 gigahertz, where these parasitics becomes very important. So we have to have our own specialized interconnection techniques which gives low parasitics, and field plate technology to enhance the breakdown voltage of these devices, so that these can be operated at very high voltages. Then since the best suitable substrate, as discussed on first day also, is silicon carbide. So our all technology which I am going to discuss is based on silicon carbide substrate. But the disadvantage of using silicon carbide substrate, in spite of the fact that it gives best RF performance, the processing is very difficult, because it is the second hardest material after diamond. But for RF device fabrication, we need to have reduction in the thickness of the wafer once we fabricate the devices on front side. So wafer thinning, then via hole fabrication, it is a specialized interconnections for low RF interconnects. So I'll be discussing that in due course of my talk. So these all processes becomes very important. So these all processes have been developed, and then you have to have your own characterization techniques, and mere DC or RF will not help. You have to have DC, pulse IV, then RF measurement, S parameter measurement, and load pull measurement to measure actual power density, what your device is capable of giving. And once you have your own active device, you have to have your own passive device with their models, and then these models are used for the designing of MMICs, which are the actual products used in these defense applications which I have just discussed. So first important thing is your own material. The HAM structure is very important, and it is a heterostructure between two different band gap materials. So one is LGAN, another is GAN, and the two deck density, as discussed by Professor Dipankar, that it depends on thickness of your barrier layer, that is wide band gap material, aluminum gallium nitride. So depending on the requirement, we have to fix up the thickness of our barrier layer, and then aluminum concentration also decides the band gap, and it then gives you the conduction band discontinuity, which is very important for the confinement of the carriers. So to have high sheet carrier density in quantum well, we have to have high thickness as well as high aluminum concentration. But to have high thickness or high aluminum concentration have other consequences. So we have to have a compromise. We just cannot increase thickness or increase aluminum concentration, because the growth issues become difficult, and we have to have a very good interface quality. Then dislocation density should be very low. Then good 2D deck characteristic means very high sheet carrier density and very high mobility. Then since these are very strained layers, so there are chances that wafer may curve or get a bow. So this bow should be minimum, because when we fabricate these devices, we are using contact lithography. So we need a perfect contact with the mask. And the other important property is the buffer resistivity. So because this is deciding your leakage current or breakdown voltage of the device, so one has to have a very high buffer resistivity. So there are different techniques with which these properties can be obtained, and now at SSPL we have our own material growth system optimized to deliver continuous high mobility of more than 2000 centimeter square per volt per second with an NS of 1 to 1.5 E13. And the bow of the wafers of 3-inch size, we have controlled less than 20 micron, which is as good as available in the commercial market. And present status of growth is presently we have a 3-inch growth technology, and our indigenous material have delivered devices with 4 watt per mm at 28 volt up to C band, and the plan is to upgrade now the wafer growth to 4-inch. And presently we are using buffer resistivity layer with the carbon doping or dislocation by introducing dislocations, but the best results obtained or reported are with the iron doping buffer. So we are now in the process of installing one new MOCVD with this iron dope capability. The system has already arrived in SSPL and under installation, and we hope to get by end of this year our own HAM structures with the iron dope buffer. Considering the device considerations, the HAM basic device design depends on your requirement of a frequency and the power density. So we just cannot take random parameters or geometrical parameters. So unit gate width is a function of power gain. So if I want to have a very high power gain at a high frequency, I have to have a control size of the device based on HFS simulation. And you can see that if my size increases enormously, if it is more than lambda by 16, then distributive effects come into play, and lot of parasitics comes, and my performance will be degraded. So depending on the frequency requirement, we have to decide the design of our device, which includes unit gate width, then gate length, gate to gate spacing, number of gates. We just cannot keep on increasing the number of these parameters just to have best performance. That will not come because it is a function of the frequency. And you can see that this graph tells you that with frequency, the power gain is reducing for a particular unit gate width. So for X band, you can see that I cannot have unit gate width more than 125 micron or 100 micron. But unit gate width of my HAMT, I can have 300 micron or 500 micron at S band, because power gain reduction is not more than 2 dB at S band for my 300 micron or 500 micron unit gate width. Similarly, total device size decides the capacitance of the device. So as I increase the frequency, I cannot have more number of fingers. So I will have to restrict my number of fingers. So complete device size is a function of frequency. So if I want to go to the higher frequencies, I have to have a smaller device size. So these all parameters are very, very important to be studied using simulation softwares, and optimum basic unit cell layout for frequency range which you are targeting is to be worked out. And similarly, since very high current densities are involved, so a lot of heat is generated. So we have to control the channel temperature of these devices also. And again, that channel temperature is a function of gate width, gate length, substrate thickness, and substrate thermal conductivity. And this channel temperature governs the design of your cooling system or the package which you are going to use once these devices are used in the actual systems. So you can see that this graph shows how these channel temperature is varying with the substrate, kind of substrate. So you can see that channel temperature is minimum for the silicon carbide substrate because of the obvious reason of having very high thermal conductivity of silicon carbide. So that is why this silicon carbide substrate is most preferred for these high power applications, because it can dissipate very high power with very fast rate, and we can have high channel current devices, high channel temperature devices delivering very high power densities. So at our place, we are basically working on two different processes. One is totally based on optical lithography, where my gate length is of the order of 0.7 micron, and that process is catering up to C-band processes. And then another process is using electron beam lithography, where my gate length is 0.3, 0.25 and 0.15, and we are working for the development of X band and KU band devices. And the complete process is 12 to 13 mask process with the dry etching, metal deposition, gold electroplating, silicon nitride deposition for passivation, and DC and RF testing, and backside processing. Normally in backside process, grinding is the process used, but here, since a lot of strain is involved in my HAMT structure, and I am not having the flexibility of to change that strain, because that strain decides the sheet carrier density and it affects my current output of the device. So I don't want to disturb my strain condition of a heterostructure. So for that, grinding is the preferred technique. So grinding is the process which is used to reduce the thickness once you complete the fabrication on front side of the wafer. And then, since silicon carbide substrate is involved, so once we completely fabricate the devices, we need to separate them by cutting or dicing them. So special dicing techniques are used to separate these devices, because we have to dice the silicon carbide. So these all processes are now available at our place, and we are regularly using them for the fabrication of devices up to X band. I'll just briefly discuss FT analysis, because going to the high frequency, it is considered that only reduction of gate length is sufficient, but reduction of gate length is not the sufficient condition to go for high frequency performance, which is required for these strategic defense applications. Because if you see that the cutoff frequency is normally based on this formula, and cutoff frequency is defined as the frequency at which my current gain is unity, and it is a mainly function of gate source capacitance, source resistance, drain resistance, and but this cutoff frequency is not only function of this gate transit time, but it is also function of the parasitic capacitance or parasitic delay involved in transport of electrons from source to drain. So mainly it is three components. One is called intrinsic delay, which is mainly reduced by reducing the gate length, and extrinsic delay is based on your gate architecture, how your gate geometry is there, whether it is close to source or it is in the center of source and drain, or its shape, whether it is mushroom gate or some other kind of gate. And then parasitic delay is how good are your contact resistances. We need to have minimum source resistance or drain resistance. So all these parameters govern the frequency performance. So reducing gate length may not be suffice. So overall device design and layout is to be worked out to have best high frequency performance depending on your requirement. So considering HEMT device layout design, so we need to manage the parasitics at high frequencies. So low source gate spacing is desirable for higher cutoff frequency. So as we go higher up in the frequency, we need to reduce gate length as well as gate to source spacing. Then mushroom or T gate is desirable because it gives low gate resistance with the high cutoff frequency. So simulation is very essential to have the optimized layout of the device before going for the actual device development. This source and drain are Omi contacts, and gate is a Schottky contact, and these have already been discussed in great detail on first day by Professor Dipankar Shah. So I will not dwell much time on these, but we have also Omi contact based on tie aluminum nickel gold, and this is suitable for up to X band applications because the RC or the figure of merit is of the order of 0.4 to 0.5 ohm mm. But when we go to KU band frequencies, you need to reduce this RC contact resistances of source and drain, and the required orders are less than 0.2 ohm mm. So, and this ohmic contact technology is not only the function of the metal stack or the temperature, because it is a long process sequence which involves RTP heating cycle, how good is your photolithography process, and what are the residues left, or how clean is the surface where you are putting metal. Then we have to use the oxygen plasma cleaning step of a particular duration, then argon bombardment to increase the nitrogen deficiency, and then pre-metal treatment to remove the oxides if there are any. So it is basically a combination of different processes for single source drain ohmic contact formation, and ultimately it leads to your figure of merit improvement. And now we have a process which is based on gold, silicon, titanium, aluminum, nickel, gold, and now we are having FOM of the order of less than 0.2 suitable for KU band applications also. And at the same time, on first day, the other important parameter of ohmic contact is smooth surface morphology and edge acuity are very important to go for smaller devices, smaller gate length devices. So this new metal system is giving us better surface morphology and better edge acuity with the RMS surface roughness of 80 angstrom. So which is as good as reported anywhere in the world. And now we are implementing this ohmic process for fabrication of KU band devices. And since all these devices are fabricated together on a single wafer, and these have to be electrically isolated, and since gallium nitride involves very high bonding energy, so no wet etching is possible. So the etching of unwanted material is done by dry etching, that too chlorine based reactive ion etching process. And you can see that this is the cross section showing, you can see that this is the active area where these are called mesas, and actual HEMT structures are fabricated over these. So simultaneously I am fabricating several HEMT devices, and they have to be electrically isolated. So I am removing the conducting material in between, but in a controlled manner. So that is done by chlorine based plasma chemistry, and this process we have developed here, and we are now regularly using for fabrication of devices. You can see that this is the source, this is drain, and this is gate, and this gate pad is to be on the buffer, and this is the active region where my 2DAG is there. And this cross section shows this is actual MESA top where device is fabricated, and this is the buffer where normally my passive component or gate pad is formed. So this process is conventionally used for MESA isolation, but these days the preferred process is ion implantation because it gives you flexibility of a planar process. So this planar process is preferred for high frequency applications beyond X band or KU band. So now we have developed this process also, and in which we are damaging the unwanted area by nitrogen implantation. So we are damaging so that there is no flow of current, and you can see that we have two different implantation doses in which nitrogen is implanted in between unwanted regions where we don't want any electrical current to flow, and that is done using selective implantation through photoresist. Where you don't want implantation to take place, we cover that area with the mask using thick photoresist, and you have to choose your parameters such that after implantation you may be able to remove that photoresist easily. Otherwise this becomes very hard because of high heat generation, and the process becomes very difficult. So we have now this process, and we have our own ion implanter at SSPL, and we are using this planar process for this MESA isolation. We are using nickel Schottky gate, and the barrier height is of the order of 0.9 electron volt with the breakdown voltage of more than 150 volts. Another important process, as on that day discussed by Professor Dipankar Shah, is device passivation, because this gallium nitride material is a very, very defective material. So traps are there. So these traps normally don't participate when we are doing DC characterization, but they come into picture during RF performance. So this trap characterization is normally carried out by pulse IV. So you can see that this is my DC characteristic, but once I am using a pulse IV measurement, because of the presence of these traps, and these traps are trapping my carrier electrons, so current reduces drastically in pulse IV or RF mode of operation. So will not ultimately get no power. So these traps are to be passivated by this silicon nitride device passivation, and this is normally done by plasma enhanced chemical vapor deposition or inductively coupled plasma chemical vapor deposition process, and these traps are passivated. And if you can see that this is a virtual gate formation process, which is I think explained by Professor Dipankar Shah, so I will not go into detail, but the basic idea is to maintain the charge state of aluminum gallium nitride layer initial charge state, because during reverse bias, when we apply negative voltage at the gate, electron leak through the gate, and they basically compensate the positive charge at the surface, and hence deplete the 2DAG, which ultimately results in the reduction in the current or two-dimensional electron density, which reduces ultimately current and increases the resistance, and this results in current collapse, which is basically reduction in the current and increase in the resistance, and ultimately the power performance is degraded. So this is normally taken care of by passivation process, and this is how we have optimized our passivation process. And this passivation, silicon nitride passivation, normally used in tensile strain, so that this tensile strain adds up in the piezoelectric polarization and increases the 2DAG to some extent, and therefore after passivation some increase in current and GM of the device performance is normally seen, and but there is slight reduction in breakdown voltage also. So you have to have optimization of these parameters to have good current recovery or minimum current collapse with high breakdown voltage and good current density. And these traps are basically because of your defects. They may be point defects, they may be aluminum gallium nitride related defects, or they may be surface defects or surface traps. So depending on their location, they are affecting my device performance. So if these traps are at the surface, then they result in the gate lag. So that is called gate lag, because my gate voltage is not able to introduce the fast variation in my source drain current. So these are mainly taken care of by passivation. But if these traps are present under the gate or in the bulk material, then they cannot be taken care of by this passivation. Then they can only be improved by improved growth techniques. And one quick way of studying presence of these traps is the CV analysis. So when we do capacitance voltage analysis at variable frequencies, you can see the CV analysis, CV curve behavior depending on these traps, because they respond to particular frequency because of their fixed time constant. So you can see that this CV graph is with respect to two different HAMT structures. So this is at where capacitance is falling suddenly, means I am at the interface of GaN and aluminum gallium nitride, and there is this is indicating the presence of traps near the interface, whereas in this there is no variation with the frequency in capacitance. So it means that there is least possibility of finding these traps at interface. So interface is good for this HAMT2 structure, whereas it is bad for HAMT1 structure. So there are different ways of studying these traps, and one of them is conventional technique, which is DLTS. So a lot of research is going on to study these traps because they basically hamper the device performance. And another important technology, because we have to have very high current handling devices. So in these devices we have multiple fingers, so all those fingers need to be connected with low parasitics interconnection. So air bridge is one of the low parasitic interconnection. At the same time, it gives you very good dimensional control with thick metal thickness that increases its current handling capability. So we have better dimensional control with high current handling capability and low parasitics. So you can see that this is basically an air bridge. So the metal is lifted from here and it is now in air. So and connecting this. So this metal crossover is mainly separated by air. So air is the dielectric which is having lowest dielectric constant. So we get this metal overlay parasitic capacitance is minimum for this kind of interconnection. And this is mainly used for connecting multi-finger gates, multi-finger sources, or multi-finger drains in large periphery devices, or in inductor, where spiral inductors, where this parasitic metal crossover parasitic becomes important at high frequencies. So, and another important technology is on wafer characterization. So I will not dwell much time on this. Dr. Meena will be discussing this, but this again is very important, because in RF technology development, you have to have quick feedback. So you need to go for quick measurements, RF measurements at wafer level, and then improve upon your process. Otherwise, in RF technology, normally these devices are packaged and bonded, and then measurement is taken place, and that takes a lot of time. So CPW measurement capability is one of the very important aspects for quick technology development that will be discussed in great detail by Dr. Meena in next talk. And another important aspect here I would like to discuss with our own experience, that just by saying that my material is good, measuring only sheet carrier density and mobility is not enough, because until the complete device is fabricated and characterized for RF performance, I cannot say that my material is good. So initially we worked with this kind of practice, but a lot of experimentation was carried out with not so good results. But once we started having discussions with our material growth team, so there was a continuous interaction with fabrication and growth team, and then based on the fabrication results, we improved upon each individual layer, be it a barrier layer or a buffer layer or a nucleation layer. And today we can say that we are almost matching the commercial wafer power output of the order of 4 to 5 watt per mm. And this is mainly because of the hand holding between growth people and device people. So it is very important to work in synergetic environment where both are discussing with constructive feedback for the improvement of the device. If you work in isolation, this is a very difficult technology. If material people will work in isolation or device people work in isolation, very difficult to achieve the desired results. Another important technology which is very much in use for these devices is field plate technology, because we are operating these devices at very high source drain voltages of the order of 28 volt, 50 volt or 65 volts. So these devices need to have very high breakdown voltage, and the thumb rule is that the breakdown voltage of these devices should be 3 times the operating voltage. So if I want to operate my device at 50 volt, it should have breakdown voltage of more than 150 volts. So normally when we fabricate device, the breakdown voltage between gate and drain depends on the electric field between gate and drain. So this field plate does, this field plate reduces the peak of the electric field by redistributing the electric field distribution in gate and drain region. So Atlas simulation is used for designing of these field plates. Basically, these, as explained by Professor Dipankar on that day, that these are extension of gate fingers. And we have, for our own devices, we have designed these field plates. So these are multi-finger field plates. Either you can connect this field plate to source or to the gate. And depending on the requirement, the device configuration is used, and you can see that when there is no field plate in a conventional device, the electric field between gate and drain is of the order of 3 megavolt per centimeter. But when we put a gate field plate, the electric field peak reduces to 1.5. And similarly, if I am using both field plates, gate connected as well as source connected, field further reduces. So this enhances my breakdown voltage, and ultimately you can see this is the actual measured result. So without field plate, my breakdown voltage of a device is around 50 volts. But with the gate connected field plate, it is around 100 volt or 90 volt. And then with both gate connected and source connected field plate, it is more than 150 volt. And now I am able to operate my device at 50 volt VDS, and the power output is of the order of 10 watt per mm. Although before, without field plate, it was 5 watt per mm. So that is how device capabilities are enhanced by using field plates or by reducing the peak of electric field between gate and drain. But there is a disadvantage of these field plates also, because we are connecting them with the gate finger. So there are because of adverse effect of this, because it is increasing the gate capacitance. So your frequency performance is getting affected. So another important advantage of field plate is that it reduces the leakage current, which is again very important aspect for these gallium nitride devices. And lower leakages provide the higher gain. But the disadvantage, as I told you, that it increases the gate source capacitance, which reduces my cutoff frequency. So you can see that without field plate, my cutoff frequency of this 0.7 micron 2-finger device is around 17 gigahertz or 16 gigahertz. But with these two field plates, although I'm getting 10 watt per mm, but my cutoff frequency is reduced to 12 gigahertz. So there are ways to design your field plate so that there is a minimum adverse effect on frequency performance. So normally source field plates are preferred because they affect less your frequency performance. So you can see that in this third device, we have now used only source finger field plates, and whereas I am able to maintain my cutoff frequency to 16 gigahertz. So not much effect is there on FT with enhancement in breakdown voltage. So these kind of field plate structures are preferred for high frequency application. And this is the process normally we follow for X band or KU band devices, where as I told you that we have to maintain the initial charge state of the GaN HAMT surface. So this technique is basically based on early passivation. Once we fabricate source and drain contacts and do implant isolation or MESA isolation, then we passivate the complete surface of the wafer, and then by using electron beam lithography we open a small gate dimension, and then using dry etching etch this small slit, which basically decides my gate length. And then in a second electron beam lithography I am defining head of my gate. So my footprint is reducing the gate length, and this is important for high cutoff frequency, but I need low gate resistance also. So this broad head is increasing my area of gate, cross section of a gate, and reducing the overall gate resistance. So this technique is normally used, and you can see that in this is EBLS, electron beam lithography, defined 0.25 micron gate dimension, and then this is showing actual silicon nitride layer is etched by dry etching and in a controlled dimension. Again, this is 0.23 micron, and then this metal deposition is carried out, and this is how this T gate looks like, because this dip in the center is basically the slit, which is gate footprint. So we have fabricated devices using this technique, and the cutoff frequency measured is of the order of 36 to 37 gigahertz with power output of 5 to 7 watt per mm. And now we are working on 0.15 micron devices. So again, same process is used, but we have now defined this electron beam lithography dimension of 0.14 micron. And then through this 0.14 micron, we need to remove selectively silicon nitride, which has already been done. And then metallization is done. And there, by this way, we are able to reduce my gate length to 0.15. And the expected cutoff frequency for this kind of gate structure is more than 35 gigahertz, which is suitable for KU band application. So now presently we are working on development of these devices. And this is the devices which we have already fabricated. And this is 12 watt device, this is 15 watt device, this is 30 watt device. And these are multi-finger devices with maximum number of fingers are of the order of 32. So you can see the complexity. Even if my one single gate finger is not working, my complete device will not work. So we have now fabricated devices up to 12 mm of gate width, and we are working towards development of 130 watt single device output power. And presently we have designed the device, and it is now under fabrication. So this 12 mm or this 7.2 mm device is delivering power of 30 watt, indicating the good device design, because we are getting very good power scaling. Otherwise, normally what happens when you just combine these smaller unit cells, if there is not good matching, there are chances that you may end up having very high losses, and your power output may not be as per the requirement. These are the X band devices, and you can see this is again the slit, and these are the number of gates in single device. So this number of gates is varying from 8 to 30 to 40 fingers depending on your requirement of power output. Now coming to the backside process, since I told you that gallium nitride uses silicon carbide as a native substrate. So once these devices are fabricated on the front side, the thickness of the wafer is reduced to 100 micron. Initial thickness is around 350 micron. And because to go for KU band or high frequencies, you need to reduce the thickness to minimize the losses. So the standard thickness is around 100 micron. So we do that reduction by grinding process, as I have already told you. And then we fabricate via holes. Via holes are the interconnection that normally used to ground the source connections. So in these power amplifiers, these devices are used in common source configuration, where source is required to be grounded. So you can ground source either with a bond wire or with the via hole techniques. But bond wire at high frequencies offer very high parasitic inductance, which hampers your frequency performance. So normally what is done, is because in these devices, backside is used as a ground plane. So we need to connect source pad to the backside ground plane. So a hole is aligned at the back of the source, and then etching is carried out, and then metal electroplating is done to connect the front side source pad to the backside ground plane. But since here silicon carbide is involved, so which is very difficult to etch, so dry etching is normally used. And we have now this process, and you can see that this is the multi-finger Hamter device where these are the source pad, and this is the backside of the same device. You can see that these are the holes which are etched on the backside of these pads, and these source pads are now directly grounded. So we don't need to connect bond wires. So this increases the frequency performance by reducing the source parasitic resistance. So these techniques are very, very essential, like air bridge interconnection or via hole interconnection technique, to have good performance out of these high power, high frequency devices. And another important requirement for MMIC development is passive component, because these integrated circuits use capacitor, inductor, resistors along with the Hamter devices. So we have parallelly developed these devices, and now we have models up to 12 gigahertz. So these models are then used for designing of MMICs, and these models are called process design kit or PDK. So we have to have a PDK of active device, we have to have a PDK of passive device. So more details will be discussed by Meena ji, I think. So I'll quickly go through the backside process. So once we have fabricated the front side devices, there are a lot of backside processes which are carried out, and this involves grinding, then via hole formation, and then dicing. So dicing again is very, very important. So diamond blades are used to dice silicon carbide, and my dicing process should be such that there should not be any degradation to the device performance. So all those processes have been optimized, and now regularly we are fabricating these devices. But uh, still these devices are suffering from a lot of degradations because very, very high electric field and high temperatures are involved. So as I told you, high electric fields are taken care of by introducing field plates, and then high temperature because of very high current density are taken care of by the design of heat sink or by using a substrate which is having very high thermal conductivity. So what is normally is done, once device is completely fabricated on silicon carbide substrate, the complete wafer is mounted on a carrier sacrificial wafer, and then silicon carbide is removed completely, and the thinned wafer is mounted on a diamond substrate, because diamond is having highest thermal conductivity of almost 4 times the silicon carbide, and then this sacrificial carrier is removed. By this way, the device performance have been reported to be enhanced by almost 3 times, and a lot of work is going on. But again, the silicon carbide and diamond are not the cost effective solution. So they are most preferred for all strategic or defense applications where performance is the main criteria. But for all commercial applications or 5G applications, a lot of research is going on GaN devices on silicon substrate, because silicon substrate is cost effective. It gives cost effective solution. At the same time, silicon wafer size is almost up to 8 inch, 12 inch, whereas silicon carbide size is restricted so far to 6 inch, but people are gradually moving towards 8 inch. But the standard fabrication wafer size till 2-3 years back was 4 inch, but now most of the foundries are graduating to 6 inch. So, but since this gallium nitride, aluminum gallium nitride is a defective material and it is a polar material, so it suffers from degradation because of the polarization. So when we are applying very high voltages, there are chances that it may introduce defects which can cause reliability issues. This is mainly because of lattice mismatch. So these defects originate mainly because of excessive mechanical stress by application of high voltage. This is called inverse piezoelectric effect. So how to take care of this? So now people are going towards new material system where is aluminium indium nitride is used as a barrier layer, because aluminium indium nitride with 17% indium is perfectly lattice matched to gallium nitride. So there is no inverse piezoelectric effect. And at the same time, there are chances that we may get, because there is no piezoelectric polarization, so there are chances that shear carrier density may get reduction, but it is not the case, because the difference in spontaneous polarization in aluminium indium nitride and gallium nitride is very high. So that gives rise to very high sheet carrier density even with very thin aluminium indium nitride layers. So that are very, very important or required for high FT or high GM devices. So this aluminium indium nitride barrier layer over gallium nitride is giving us two advantages. One is thin layers, important for very high frequency devices, and second is it is lattice match, so there is no piezoelectric effect, so no mechanical stress and less defects, so more reliable device. So you can see in this that this indium aluminium nitride at 17% is lattice match to gallium nitride. And similarly, if you look at aluminium nitride, if we use in thin layers, the spontaneous polarization difference is even more. So if we grow very thin aluminium nitride layer over gallium nitride, then there may be slight strain, but because of very high difference in spontaneous polarization, we get very high current density devices. So these new generation of devices are now being reported worldwide based on these two kind of heterostructures, and people are going for aluminium indium nitride or aluminium nitride devices. And then a new generation of devices is coming up, which is aluminium scandium nitride. Again, aluminium scandium nitride, because of very high spontaneous polarization, gives sheet carrier density of almost 3 times the conventional electrons, conventional heterostructures, and therefore 3 ampere per mm of the IDS current density devices are being reported. So that is basically all is, it is material engineering or heterostructure advancements. So you can see that in conventional heterostructure, we have 1.5 into 10 to the power 13 sheet carrier density per centimeter square, whereas in aluminium indium nitride with even with very thin layer 10 nanometer, whereas in conventional it is 30 nanometer. So my sheet carrier density is almost double. So I am getting very high current density at very, very thin layers, which is giving me flexibility of very, very small pinch of voltage. So these devices are resulting in very high transconductance devices, because very, very small variation in gate voltage is causing large variation in my drain current. So these kind of devices are preferred for high frequency applications, and you can see that the GaN-HAMT capabilities, which have already been reported, best GaN-HAMT is reported based on indium aluminum nitride aluminum gallium nitride heterostructure with the gate length of 30 nanometer. So this is basically using advantage of high spontaneous polarization difference and smaller gate length, of course with improved source drain contact technology. And so far the highest reported frequency for these gallium nitride HAMTs is based on aluminium nitride barrier layer over gallium nitride. On that first day, there was a question that are these devices suitable for terahertz applications? Yes, people are exploring these devices, and this is one of the device which is having gate length of the order of 20 nanometer, and the cutoff frequency reported for this device is 454 gigahertz. So people are exploring this these kind of devices up to 0.4 to 0.3 terahertz applications for imaging applications. And these devices are certainly having potential to go for 6 gigahertz or beyond. But so far, the best reported FT of the device with 20 nanometer using aluminium nitride, gallium nitride heterostructure is 454 gigahertz. And a lot of advancement is going on to improve the substrate properties also, and people are exploring any other substrate for growing these HAM structures, and zeroing in on aluminum nitride, because aluminum nitride is almost lattice match to gallium nitride, if you can see here. So the growth defects will be minimized, and at the same time aluminum nitride is having good thermal conductivity, although not equal to silicon carbide, but because of better growth parameters, because of better lattice match, the performance of these devices is expected to be very good at high frequencies. And this is the recent report of this year only, and Fujitsu has reported 15 watt per mm device at X band on aluminum nitride substrate. Although substrate size so far developed is of only 2 inch, but a lot of research is going on, and in near future we may see devices based on aluminum nitride substrate because of better growth uh, layers, better grown layers with minimum defects. Because you can see in normally when on silicon carbide, the dislocation densities of the order of 10 to the power 9 to 10 to the power 8 per centimeter square, which are basically defects, and that is mainly because of the lattice mismatch of 3 to 4%, whereas here lattice mismatch is very very less. So the defect density reported is of the order of 10 to the power 4 to 5, which is very good. So these devices have very high potential, and maybe in future coming up with lot of demand because of better properties. And if you look at GaN market, RF market projections, the main technology drivers are high frequency, high power, and high linearity. So all defense applications and satellite communication applications require high frequency and high power. So these devices are very much in demand for satellite communication or defense applications. Whereas the communication links are concerned, where linearity is the prime requirement, these devices are not that linear. So that is the reason they are not very much in use for all communication links. But in future, with the advancement in technology, the linearity improves, and the GaN based HBTs come in the market. This technology is going to take over the complete RF market, and the projections so far with the present technology is the present 2019 yield report says that the market overall is of the order of $700 million, and it is going to rise to in 2024 to $2 billion. And the main advanced utilization is in the field of wireless infrastructure because of 5G and military applications. And as I told you that many foundries are because the cost effective solution, and if you process a wafer, whether it is 4-inch or 6-inch, processing cost is almost same, but 4-inch and 6-inch yield almost get doubled. So many foundries are now gradually moving towards 6-inch wafer technology, and these are the foundries worldwide: Sumitomo, NXP, Qorvo, Wolfspeed, OMIC, BAE. These all are going to 6-inch because of these requirements and uh, demand for cost effective solution with very good performance. And this GaN on silicon carbide, the projections are such that up to 2030 they are in demand mainly for wireless infrastructure and defense applications. And the lot of demand is there in Asia Pacific region, and mainly Japan and India. So the next 10 to 15 years, lot of requirement of GaN on silicon carbide devices for these wireless infrastructure is there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful talk on GaN HAM, starting from materials, fabrication, and various ongoing research work in India as well as outside India. So participants, if you are having any questions, you can please type your questions in Q&A section. Sir, these questions can be seen from Q&A section. Did you find, sir?
Actually, I have another meeting lined up, so I will reply on email if I'll go through these questions later on and reply to all. Presently, I think I'll not be able to take more than one or two questions.
Okay, sir. Okay. Okay, so that will be okay. I think we can.
I'll reply later on. They can post their questions with email, and I will reply them suitably to individual or each individual.
Right, sir. Right. So I will compile all the questions and will email you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So thank you very much, sir, for accepting our request to deliver your talk. And it was a really nice talk on particularly on GAN-HAM. So thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Okay, sorry for not giving enough time for question answer session, but there is an important meeting lined up and I have to report to immediately to the office within next 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, sir. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
So participants, we will be joining again quarter to 12.